Hello and welcome to 99.1 WIUX LP Bloomington. My name is Connor Wright,
I'm Gavin Gorski.
and you're listening to GavCon 5.
We have a very special guest in the studio today.
Yep.
His name is Mark Gorski. He's also my dad. Thanks for being on the show, Dad.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here. I and much of your family, certainly all of your family on the West Coast and Midwest, are regular listeners to GavCon 5. So to be on the show is a real honor.
Well, hopefully they're all listening right now.
I hope so. Maybe I'll just do a quick shout out if she happens to be listening. Grandma Pat in Rescue, California. Want to say hello from the Gorski family.
Yay.
And to any other family members, if you come to Bloomington, you can also be on the show yourself. So keep that in mind.
Exactly.
Well, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So I'm Gavin's dad. That's first and foremost. And Gavin's mom, Michelle, is right next to Gavin over there. She's in the studio as well. She's in the house. I think I'm on the show in part because this is Little 500 bike race weekend at Indiana University, which is a huge weekend here, an iconic event, and this is my first time ever to see the Little 500 race. So it's amazing for me that I'm going to both see the race for the first time and watch Gavin in the race. It's incredibly exciting. But I think the reason I'm on the show in part because I had a 17-year career as a cyclist, which the culminating event for me was the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles, where I won a gold medal in sprint cycling. So it is kind of related to the Little 5 in the sense that the type of racing I did was on a velodrome, an oval track. Very similar to the Little 5. There are some significant differences too. But anyway, that Connor, I think that's what you were trying
That's a good introduction.
seeking in the intro.
Yeah.
I think when I tell people, oh yeah, my dad, he was a professional cyclist. The question I get the most often is like, does he still ride?
Yeah, I do. It's funny because I get a lot of questions related to cycling for me, and I get that question a lot. Do I ride? And I think, my answer always is, I will always be riding, because I think what drew me to cycling when I was 10, 11, 12 years old is the same thing which keeps me cycling at 63 years old. I think will keep me cycling at 73 and 83 and hopefully beyond, is just it makes you feel good. It's a way to it's almost like, Connor, I know you love hiking, and in a way it's a lot of the same dynamics of exploring, being outside, being in nature. You do all that on a bike, and it's just a great way to see any place, explore it, and you're exercising at the same time, like hiking,
yeah.
Which I know you like to do, Gavin, as well. So anyway, it's I will be cycling. I probably ride 4 days a week, 5 days a week still today. I get out early mornings, typically ride 15 miles, 20 miles, maybe 30 miles, 35 miles on the weekends, 40 miles. So not long distances, but I do try to ride fast and kind of high intensity. And the quick answer is I still ride and always will.
Sweet.
That's kind of exactly what Emily said, though, about cycling. She's like, she used to run, and she's like, wait, I can hop on a bike and go way further and see everything. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It's true, because you're doing it kind of like at, let's say, 20 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously faster than running or walking.
Mm-hmm.
You could cover more ground.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to explore. And I've done a lot of exploring all over the world on my bike. Even when I was there for competitions, you go off on a morning training ride in Tokyo or in, Berlin, Germany, or in Milan or wherever, and you just get to see, you can feel the environment, the people, the buildings, the traffic sometimes, but it's a great way to explore any place.
Dad, you grew up in the Chicago area. What was that like starting your cycling career there?
Yeah, so Chicago, obviously, big city, a lot of traffic. But despite that, I lived out in kind of the west suburbs, maybe roughly 25 miles west of downtown. And so there were great roads and even bike trails going to the west and maybe south and west from where I lived. So it was busy and trafficy if you went in towards the city, but when you headed west, it was not too bad. What was interesting about growing up in Chicago is, there's a large community of immigrant families that, turn of the century came from Germany, came from Ireland, came from Italy, and other countries, Poland, which is where our family came from. A lot of those countries have a long history, active history in cycling. So there's a lot of kids that I kind of grew up racing against whose parents emigrated, or parents or grandparents emigrated to the U.S. and cycling was kind of in their blood, was sort of part of their country's culture and their culture. So there were kids that I raced against at 15, 16, 17 years old from the Chicagoland area that were maybe first or second or third generation German immigrants, Italians, Poles, and others, and they were very passionate about cycling, and they had a little higher level of knowledge about cycling than most people did at that time.
So, what was your first race, or how did you start racing?
So, the first bike race that I ever went to was at the Northbrook Velodrome in Northbrook, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, and it was, in a way, it wasn't like as iconic a day as the Little 500, but it might be similar to a young boy or girl from Bloomington who happened to come, or from the area, let's say from Indiana, who happened to come to the Little 500 and said, wow, it's really a spectacle. It's fast. It was at night at the Velodrome in Northbrook. It was under the lights. It really was a spectacle. It was very exciting, and I think that experience, along with the fact that I was an athlete, participated in a lot of other sports, but seeing that race on the Velodrome is really what sparked my interest in racing. I had a couple years of active riding in non-competitive races like century rides and things in the Chicago area. The real genesis of me even thinking about cycling, though, it began in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was 10 years old. This was 1970. And we were staying with some very good family friends of ours on 46th Street in Indianapolis, just down the street from Butler University. And they were both art professors at IUPUI, actually, downtown Indy. Huh. Mm-hmm. And the father of the family was from Italy. And he said he watched me, he saw me play basketball, which I loved, and saw my kind of size and my body makeup and my physiology, and said, Mark, I think you'd make a really good cyclist. And that meant nothing to me, because cycling in 1970 in the United States was completely unknown. No young boys or girls were even thinking about cycling at that time. They were thinking about baseball, football, basketball, hockey, maybe race car driving, Indianapolis 500 nearby. But it certainly wasn't cycling. But it that planted a seed, and the neighbor had like a 10-speed Schwinn Varsity, which was not really a race bike, but it certainly wasn't, it really wasn't like a BMX bike, or it had sort of the characteristics of what future, road racing bikes were like. And I rode that Schwinn Varsity at 10 years old from their house on 46th Street to downtown Indianapolis, and then back to their house, which, I don't know, maybe it was like 10 or 12 miles. Mm-hmm. but it was probably that first experience of freedom, independence, and seeing a place on a bike, on two wheels, which was a really interesting experience. That you fast forward to 1973, at 13 years old, going to see that race on the velodrome in Northbrook and seeing an incredibly exciting cycling event on a track. And then the next year, 1974, when I was 14, is when I first rode my first race. And my first races were on the road, but I very quickly, in the first 1 or 2 or 3 years, was racing both road races and track races on the velodrome there in Northbrook, and another one actually in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, when did you start to specialize specifically in track cycling?
It was almost from the beginning, in the sense that because I lived, a fairly close drive from a velodrome, and they had regular racing through the summer, that I participated in those regular races. So I wouldn't say I was kind of, from a training perspective, I was necessarily specializing in track racing, but I was getting exposure to and racing in those. So I was learning the dynamics of like that pack racing, very similar to Little 500 is today, actually, for the women, and tomorrow for the men. Kind of becoming adept at riding in the pack, so to speak, and then with the emphasis really being on speed, where finishing a half wheel ahead of your competitor is, there's races are very close finishes, almost photo finishes, almost consistently in track cycling, along with road racing, which is much more endurance oriented. I was doing both. I would say, to your question about specialization, I would say it really started a little bit later, when I was preparing for the junior world championships, where in cycling, like a lot of other sports, with track and field, gymnastics, swimming, tennis, and many others, where there's major international competitions for ages 16 to 18 is the junior category in cycling. I think it's pretty similar in a lot of other sports. So I was on. By the time I was 17, I was the U.S. junior champion in track cycling, and specifically in sprint cycling. So I made progress, fairly quickly, and then was selected to represent the United States in the Junior World Championships, so you're competing against the rest of the world at other 17 and 18-year-olds. Where the specialization really started at that point was because then you're really not just everyone's doing the road race, everyone's doing the sprint, everyone's doing the pursuit. It's you are really starting to have to specialize into where you were best suited physiologically.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, who are some of your most influential coaches?
Well, my coach in my kind of the heart of my career from late teens to late 20s was a former rider former Olympian named Roger Young, who was a national champion and Olympian in sprint cycling. His sister, Sheila Young, her married name is now Sheila Young Akowitz, was a multiple Olympic medalist in speed skating. She was truly one of the great women athletes, of the 20th century for sure. She was also a world champion in cycling. That was his sister. Roger was incredibly talented, and he was maybe even better as a coach. And so he coached both me and his wife, Connie Paraskevin Young, who was a multiple world champion and Olympic medalist in both speed skating and cycling as well. My first coach was a bike shop owner in Chicago. His name was Alberto Bustamante. He was from Argentina, and he made a huge impact on my life, in the sense that he helped me at the very early stages of my career when I really needed it. The one thing I wanted to go back and say, though, is like in the first year or even first 2 years as a cyclist, I probably rode 20, 25, 30 races in that first year when I was 14. I did not win one of those races. I don't think I finished in the top 3 in one of those races. There were a lot of those races where I finished not last, but in the back of the pack, let's say. I think the obviously the lesson there is, it took me a while to kind of figure out cycling, to figure out, how to do this, how to train for it, how to ride in a pack in a velodrome, what to eat, all the things that contribute to success as an athlete, your preparation. I didn't get it right. I didn't, I wasn't a success at all that first year to 2 years. And a lot of young men and women, a lot of young boys and girls that start in a lot of different activities, not just sports, could be playing an instrument or, whatever kind of passion they might choose. If they don't have success at it immediately, it's, the easy decision is, that's not for me. I'm going to move on, do something else. And I would just encourage, anyone listening or young boys and girls to, if it's what you really love, don't give up on it. It's, success is not attained easily in anything. And oftentimes, you're not, it takes a while to put all the pieces together. And so it definitely did for me. And those first couple of years were just kind of discouraging at times, but I loved it. And it kind of gets back to, if you enjoy being on 2 wheels, being on a bike, and I did, then I really felt like, I'm not going to be deterred. I want to do this.
Yeah. Makes sense. Very inspirational.
Yeah.
Words have been for inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of alluded to like doing the little things right, like eating right, preparation. What kind of specifically were you doing wrong that maybe you were able to fix?
I think a number of things that changed me. I think they changed the sport, and I think they've changed a lot of sports. And I'll kind of explain what I'm talking about is, if you look at the athletes of 30, 40, 50 years ago in baseball, even football, basketball, definitely cycling, golf, they didn't really look as much like really true, finely tuned athletes as they do today. And you look at Tiger Woods, and obviously he swings a golf club, he did as well as anybody on the planet. But he does a lot of working out, a lot of weight training, a lot of endurance training. And, I spent years and years and years, I've probably ridden, well over 100,000 miles of cycling during my cycling career, anywhere from probably 5,000 to 10,000 miles a year. And that's a lot of repetitive repetitions of the pedal stroke. So you're really refining that. It's almost like refining a golf swing because, it's not, when you get jumping on a bike and making it go fast, it's not just stomping on the pedals. There's a real technique to the efficient pedaling of a bicycle. But what you have to layer in there then is strength and stamina, obviously, and flexibility. And so the strength part of it is a lot. I did a lot of weight training over the years, lower body and upper body. I was in the gym a lot. And I think, like a lot of sports, before this shift in kind of preparing for to be a top athlete, the notion of lifting weights was like, oh, you can't lift weights as a basketball player. It'll destroy, your jump shot or your free throws. Like you can't have touch if you're lifting weights. Well, you look at LeBron James. LeBron James does a lot of weight training, and all the top guys in the NBA do a lot of weight training. And so cycling was kind of similar. Like lifting weights is like, well, you're going to slow down. You're not going to be able to pedal the bike as well. You're going to kind of tie yourself up in knots, because you're trying to do too many weights. And so added weight training in, a lot of squatting over the years, especially as a sprinter, much more so than an endurance rider. Flexibility also, a lot of stretching. Connor, Gavin knows. I kind of harp on Gavin to do a lot of stretching. His mom does too.
Do I follow that?
Do you do the stretching?
I probably should do it more. We've been doing yoga as a team.
Oh, nice.
Really? Okay.
We go to like the SRSC, the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and there's classes. So we've done that a couple times. But anyway, continue.
Is my audio levels okay here?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah.
Flexibility is very important. I learned that from some of my top competitors in the world, that were big guys, very strong, did a lot of weight training, incredibly flexible. And I see that now in even baseball players, golfers, like, it's that, Gavin, I'm going back to your original question, which is, what are the little things you have to do right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the strength training, it's flexibility, it's nutrition, eating the right foods, healthy foods, a lot of fruits and vegetables, limiting meats to some extent, obviously limiting a lot of sweets and kind of junk food. You just can't afford to do that. And getting the right amount of rest. It's doing the right things day in and day out for months and months and months. And it's funny because over the years there would be a lot of my competitors that I'm a pretty nice, friendly, approachable guy. They're like, "Hey, Mark, tell me what what's your secret? What do you do? Like, how do you train?" And I would never be reluctant to share what I did for training. Like, here's my training diary. You can look. I had a year by year diary every single day. It's all logged in exactly how many miles, the intervals I did, the stretching I did, the weight training I did, the amount of sleep. The thing is that all of those people that wanted to be doing what I did and performing at the level that I did, I never believed that they could make the sacrifices and had the discipline to do it, because it's really hard to do that. I mean, you get distracted. You're like, "Oh, I want to hang out with my friends. I want to go on a trip. I want to." You have to be so singularly focused to be able to do those things right and do all the little things right, day in and day out, month in and month out, and for years on end, that it takes an incredible commitment to do that. And for me, it never felt like drudgery doing that, because I loved what I did. I also loved to win, because there's no better feeling than being a winner. And so if you love to win, then doing all those little things were just like, it's just what you need to do. And a lot of it I just thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoy being healthy. I still do to this day. So I think, though, I'm glad you asked the question, because I feel strongly about it. But it's the little things, and that's not true. That's not only true with sports. It's a lot of other areas of life, and business, and any type of performance, that artistic performance, musical performance. You have to pull together so many aspects of what you do and work on so many things, and frankly, work on the things that you're weakest at. Focus on your weak links, not what you're strongest at. That's what, I think that's a great approach to training and preparing for anything, is, really focusing on, in the months and months of preparation, focusing on where your weak links are.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was a great answer.
Yeah.
Good.
We could take our first or our only break, I guess, right here. That was a good stopping point.
That's a good stopping point. Thanks for listening to GavCon 5, and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to 99.1 WIOX LP Bloomington. You're still listening to GavCon 5, and we're still here with Gavin's dad, our special guest.
Mark Gorski.
We're still here.
He didn't leave.
No, he did not. He doesn't really have anywhere to go, though. Over the break, I was getting you ready for the next question. Do you have any particularly memorable or funny story or stories that you'd like to share?
Well, one of them, which I don't know if it's funny. It probably is a little bit of a window into how focused I was. And you all are kind of hearing about my level of focus on, training and what it took to win, and also really loving to win. And the Olympics in Los Angeles, 1984, way, way, way before the two of you guys were born. My event took place over 4 days, and after each day, kind of like you see today, and after the NBA games or college football games, whatever, the athletes come in front of the media, they ask questions, and so after each day, there was a press conference, and how are you feeling, and what do you think of your rider you're going to face tomorrow, and so after the third day of the Olympics in track cycling were the semifinals for my race. So it's one-on-one. It's one rider versus another. So I had to race against a Japanese rider, and there was another American that qualified for the Olympics. His name was Nelson Vales, who is an African-American cyclist. He grew up in Harlem, incredibly physically talented, a great, great rider, was really up and coming. And Nelson won his semifinal against the top French rider in the world. So we finished up day 3 winning the semifinals, which means day 4 was going to be the big matchup between the two Americans for the gold medal. So there was the press conference after day 3. And you're sitting up at the table, the media table, and there's literally 100+ journalists from all over the world there. And one journalist, there were a few kind of random questions. And then one of the journalists asked Nelson, you're going to go to bed tonight knowing that tomorrow you're going to win either a gold medal or a silver medal in the Olympic Games. Like, how does that feel? And Nelson said, that being here right now it's a dream come true, that whatever happens tomorrow, I will be happy, whether it's gold or silver. And said I'm just incredibly happy and satisfied, or maybe what I heard was satisfied, because we were sitting very kind of close to each other, looking out in front of this sea of journalists, and the journalist said to me, "Mark, same question for you. You're going to go to bed tonight. Tomorrow at the end of the day, you're going to have either a gold or silver medal in the Olympics. Like, that's got to be a pretty good feeling." And without really missing a beat, I said, if I don't win the gold medal, I don't even want the silver medal. That's what I said to the entire world, including Nelson, who was sitting right next to me. And it's funny because I think that, and I didn't realize it at the time, I wasn't saying it to play kind of mind games or try and psych out Nelson or try and get the mental edge. It's truly how I felt. I just wasn't going to be happy until I won the Olympics, and I'd been dreaming about it since I was a kid. So I really believe in hindsight that mindset is what played a huge role in me winning. Is just wasn't going to feel comfortable and satisfied until I won. And I really, I see that in top athletes. We talking about golfers, and you see some of the real champions that are grinding and grinding and grinding. They're not going to let up until they, 18th hole, they sink that last putt and they've won the Masters or U.S. Open or whatever, and or any sport. And it's just, I think that the whole room was kind of like, just went kind of quiet and silent, and they wrote, the journalist wrote about it the next day. Like Gorski said, if he doesn't win the gold, he doesn't even want the silver medal. So I'm sure at the time there were probably people that thought, wow, like that wasn't the most diplomatic thing to say, but it's exactly how I felt. And I do think, it's kind of just all about being focused, being driven, and, not being satisfied, like continuing to work hard and press at whatever it is until you're, until you reach your goal, not, what anybody else might think. It's got to be what your goal is inside of you. So that was, one that sticks out in my mind, but there certainly were a lot of, amazing experiences after winning the gold medal, going to the White House, all of the Olympic medalists, we all went to New York City. We got a ticker tape parade on Broadway. Just things that, experiences that I never could have imagined experiencing and never dreamed by being, the world's fastest cyclist, that those are the things that might happen to me. And so it was, there were just really some incredible experiences.
I wanted to ask, how has cycling changed since you retired from the sport? And what are some things that would surprise people today? I know one time you mentioned that people didn't wear like sunglasses. People didn't wear like cycling glasses when they rode, or even like helmets have changed and stuff like that.
There's been, like a lot of sports, there's been a lot of significant changes in technology. People would wear, old school like Ray-Ban sunglasses back in the day. And I mean, the whole kind of shield, like Oakley type glasses, that only came about like kind of mid '80s. Helmets, the hard shell helmets, like Bell helmets, and the variety of brands of helmet brands. Like I've had some really serious crashes on the velodromes around the world. I had one crash in Japan in 1981 where I landed on my head and I woke up in the hospital about 90 minutes later. I had a severe concussion. I was unconscious for about 90 minutes. Stayed in the hospital there for many days while they were observing me, and I'd had severe head trauma. I wasn't wearing a hard shell helmet. They weren't really even in production then. They were these old school like leather, not terribly protective helmets. The bikes are significantly lighter today, both in sprinting and all forms of track cycling. Certainly in road cycling, they're several pounds lighter than they were back in the 80s, early 80s. I think that, even weight training and just the physiological testing that goes into folks that are preparing, strength training, endurance training is it's monitored so much more closely. This is actually kind of funny about the whole sunglasses is because I wear contact lenses, which are a little bit of a hindrance at times in cycling because you're going through the air, your stuff gets in your eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like if anyone wears contact lenses, they know like doing something at speed in open air can be a problem. So sunglasses are helpful, but on the velodrome in the race that I did, wearing sunglasses is actually like kind of it inhibits your peripheral vision. You need to really be aware of the cyclists around you. So I had this brilliant idea of, okay, I wear contact lenses. I'm going to go to the eye doctor and have him produce a pair of contact lenses that are super dark, like dark brown.
Huh.
And so that they would be like sunglasses on my eyes.
Huh.
So he's like, well, we've never done that before, but we'll try it. And so they literally make these kind of like dark brown lenses. So the whole point was like, I don't want to have to wear sunglasses because it will, this is all pre-Oakley and pre-Shield type glasses. So it worked. It wasn't perfect, but my eyes probably looked kind of funny. But it kind of gave me a bit of that because the event, the velodrome that I raced on in Los Angeles in '84 was outdoors. There are indoor velodromes where obviously sun doesn't come into play or even the wind. So anyway, just kind of the crazy things you do to try to deal with the elements and the venue that you're going to be in.
So when you raced in the Olympics, you were wearing those contacts?
I was wearing those contact lenses, those dark brown. Even though my eyes are blue, everyone's like, "Hey, what happened, Mark? Your eyes are brown now." So yeah, there have been significant changes technologically. Bikes are much lighter, wheels are much lighter, carbon fiber wheels. I think back to like my handlebars back in what I rode in '84 with these literally steel bars that now it's all carbon fiber. It's probably less than half the weight of just the handlebars alone. So some significant changes. I think I would there's a back in my mind somewhere. There's a little part of me that says, "Gosh, I wonder." The times have gotten a little bit faster today, but the competitive side of me is like, well, if I had the advantage of these light bikes and better technology, I'm sure I would be riding those similar times. It's hard to say. It's hard to compare, and I think that's true in so many sports that the greats of yesteryear want to believe they would be competitive and one of the best in today's environment, but I think it's really difficult to compare because there in a lot of sports there have been major changes.
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm. What were some of those kind of worst crashes you experienced?
I had a few over the years. A couple. The worst one was the one in Japan where I was competing in this international competition there. I was on the very steeply banked velodrome, and on the track bikes that we ride, there's no brakes. There's just like a little 5 bike. There's no brakes on the little 5 bike.
There is.
There's a coaster brake?
Yeah.
There's a coaster brake, so you don't even have a coaster brake on. There's no brakes. The tires are probably even half the width of a little 5 bike. They're much, much narrower. So you're on a very kind of a razor's edge of like stability and balance. And you're on a steeply pitched concrete surface. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was my front tire blew out right in the middle of the banking. And because you go from like sitting on this nice solid surface of a tire to just it almost goes down to the rim, which is it's a very unstable surface that you're on, going 45 miles an hour. So I immediately just my bike went out from under me and I flipped over and landed literally right on my head. That's what people told me happened, because the next thing I knew, the last thing I remember, I'm in the race. I'm like, I'm at speed. I remember, okay, I'm trying to win this race. The next thing I know, I see fluorescent lights like the ones right up there going, like moving, and I'm on my back. And I'm kind of piecing it all together. Okay, my shoulder really hurts. Wow, my head really hurts. I must be in a hospital because I'm not, I guess, and the first thought was, gosh, I guess I'm not going to win the race. I'm not going to win the race from the hospital. And then it was like, wow, okay, it must be pretty bad because I'm in a hospital. I wonder what happened. So,
yeah,
and then as you kind of gradually regain consciousness, the coach is there like, look, they took you out in a stretcher. You went in an ambulance to this hospital. And then I'm in the hospital bed and I'm 6'2", and my legs hung out over the edge of the hospital bed by about 1.5 feet. Like the Japanese people in general are shorter, and hospital beds aren't made for 6'2" Americans. And so I was in the hospital for many days. So that was obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, that was a serious crash. I had kind of headaches, some vision issues for a few weeks after, but I was able to come back from that to that was 3 years before the Olympics in '84. I had other crashes, sometimes on the velodrome when you're training for in your final training stages for a big competition like the Olympics or World Championships. They allow motorcycles to come out on the track, And because drafting is such an important part of cycling, and obviously at that speed at 40, 45 miles an hour, you would do training sprints behind a motorcycle where you would ride like within literally a couple of inches of the back tire of a motorcycle. And what it allows you to do is ride faster than you would without that draft. So you'd be on a velodrome probably sprinting at 50, 52, 53 miles an hour, and you're flying into the corner at really speeds that are almost too fast, because it's almost artificially fast because you're drafting a motorcycle. And one time, I think this was in Colorado at the velodrome in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. I was flying into that final corner and I blew my rear tire and slid out. Fortunately, I didn't hit my head, but I landed on my left shoulder this time because I slid out and my bike went up to the right, and my shoulder went down to the left towards the track surface. And I just slid for 100 feet probably, because, nothing to stop me at that point. And I had I tore my rotator cuff, had really bad abrasions. So I've had a few crashes like that where, abrasions are bad. A lot of, you lose a lot of skin. I've separated both shoulders or rotator cuffs and broken collarbones as well, which is pretty common for cycling. Even I bet of the, of the 100 plus women and men riding the Little 500 tomorrow, I bet a few of them have had broken collarbones, because it's a pretty common accident in cycling, because you tend to get launched over the handlebars and you land on your shoulder, or you put your arm out to break your fall, and then you kind of you end up injuring your shoulder. So that's a pretty common injury in cycling.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some more fun questions here rather than crashes, but who's your favorite famous person or professional athlete that you've met as a result of your career?
That's a really good question. I have met a number of great athletes. I was fortunate enough to meet Michael Jordan. I met Michael Jordan. I spent his agent, which is now the subject of this new movie Air, which is David Falk with ProServe.
Yeah.
I was represented by the same firm, ProServe, out of Washington, D.C. And because my agent knew David Falk so well, we said, well, let's go. It was Michael Jordan's rookie season, the NBA All-Star game, and there's probably a lot of people here in Bloomington and certainly Indianapolis would remember this. The NBA All-Star game was in Indy. It was Michael Jordan's rookie year. I was living in Indianapolis, and my agent was in town. He said, well, let's go up and say hi to Michael. And Michael Jordan was also on the 1984 Olympic team. Mm-hmm. And so we went up, and I spent probably 15, 20 minutes with him, chatting away, talked about the Olympics in 84. And it was, at the time, he was a rookie in the NBA, and, he'd won the NCAA championships, but I would say no one really knew yet that he was going to become, maybe the greatest ever. I know there's the debate, he and LeBron and Kobe and Kareem, but so it was a thrill to spend time with him and not just shake his hand. The other for me, a lot of the great athletes are basketball oriented. I did meet about a week before the Olympics. I was we were at a hotel which is where we stayed. I didn't actually stay in the Olympic Village because the village was like an hour away from where the velodrome was. So we stayed nearby where it was just much more convenient. And I was going for a training ride about a week before the Olympics, where all the team was staying, and I was riding on my own. I came out of the side of the hotel, and I looked to my right, and there's a baby blue Rolls-Royce convertible in the parking lot of I think it was Ramada Inn. This was not like a high-end hotel. This was a very average hotel. And there was a 7'2" African-American man sitting on the curb next to another very short guy with white curly hair, and who I did not recognize. And so I kind of definitely did a double take, and I looked over and I looked closer and I said, "Oh my God, that's Wilt Chamberlain." And so I was kind of in shock. I was like, "Oh my God, Wilt Chamberlain is sitting like 100 feet from me. It's an empty parking lot except for the baby blue Rolls Royce." And so I did a little U-turn. I rode my bike over. I said, "Mr. Chamberlain, my name is Mark Gorski. It's a thrill to meet you." I said, "I'm a big fan of yours. I read your book when I was 11 or 12 years old called Wilt, which is kind of a legendary book." He talks about his, he's quite a ladies' man. And he looked at me, and I was wearing this like Stars and Stripes jersey. I was wearing the U.S. team jersey that I was going to be competing in the Olympics. It was a training version. And he said, "Well, what's what you got going on there? You're on your bike. Like, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Well," I said, "Wilt, I said, Mr. Chamberlain, in a week I'm going to be competing in the Olympic Games in cycling." He goes, "Oh my God, well that's great." He said, "Well, good luck. I'll be watching for you." And I thought, wow, and I rode my bike away, and I was kind of like just on a cloud nine for like my whole ride. I was like, wow, that was an amazing interaction. I got to meet Wilt Chamberlain, and not thinking that there would ever be any follow-up to this story. And so 3 years later, there at the velodrome in Los Angeles, at the Olympic Velodrome, there was a major international. It was actually a USA versus USSR. This is 1987. They used to have those in a lot of sports, whereas, it was the big Cold War battles. And I was in the infield of the track, like doing my warm up, getting ready for the race. And there was the way you get from outside the velodrome inside is a tunnel. That's the way they constructed the facilities. And I happened to look over, and coming up the steps of the tunnel and into the infield of the track is Wilt Chamberlain. And I'm like, what the heck? Hey, why is Wilt Chamberlain coming to this bike race? And I'm like, well, he saw me, but I'm like to myself, he's never going to remember. And so I was like, okay, once again, I'm going to march over there, and I march over to Wilt Chamberlain. And you need to look up, if you do a Google search on Wilt Chamberlain, just under images, not basketball images, but just like the Wilt Chamberlain out and about in Los Angeles and Wilt Chamberlain partying. Because I walk up to Wilt, and Wilt Chamberlain was wearing all white bell-bottom pants, a white silk shirt, which is buttoned down to like his navel with like the gold chains. Like he was bigger than life, literally. And I literally am like looking at him like right at like waist level. Like my eyes are at his waist. And as I walk up to Wilt Chamberlain, he says the first words, "Mark Gorski, you did it. I watched you do it." It was 3 years ago, and I literally almost just fell over. I was almost in shock. Just there's no way Wilt Chamberlain's going to remember this interaction. This kid that just happened to like say, "Yeah, Wilt, I'm a big fan of yours." Like he gets that every day, like 100 times a day. But he was there. He came to the race. It was for me, and the greatness of Wilt and just his persona and who he was. That was a really special interaction for me for sure.
Yeah,
Sweet.
it's pretty cool.
That was cool.
Are you guys ready for the little 500 to start then?
Yeah, we
Women's
got to
race
head
in
over
a few hours.
in about an hour.
About an hour? Does it start at 4?
Yeah, it starts at 4.
Oh, okay. Well,
So Gavin, it's really a thrill to be here with you racing Little 500. You guys qualified 8th, the Cinzano Team Cinzano.
Yep.
Guys really are going to be right in the mix and really have a shot at doing well.
Yep. We're excited.
Well, as your dad, I am very, very, and Mom, who's here, we're very, very proud. And we are so glad we're here in person. And your brother Will's flying in tonight to watch you. So Connor will be out there. I'm sure it's going to be, it's really a thrill. I mean, we haven't even talked about the movie Breaking Away, but the legend of this event, was cemented by the incredible movie of 1979, 1980, and millions and millions of people have seen that movie, and you're going to be living it tomorrow, which is pretty amazing.
As Cinzano. Well, that's a good place to stop. Thanks for being on the show, Dad.
Yeah, thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
it.
Thank you for having me. It was really a thrill, and your mom and I have been avid listeners, and congratulations on this great show. And you guys are you guys going to keep this going for next through your next 3 years, 2 years, and
plan to
through senior year? That'd be great.
All goes well.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great weekend, and make sure you tune into the Little 500 results. You can find them on the IDS.